Administration have cast some blame for the rise in prices on oil companies. They have pushed back.
Demand has risen. We've had the price shock of Russia invading Ukraine. There are various factors that go into the price of oil, but we're not setting that price.
Analysts say while the pain is very real right now, they believe prices will eventually go back down.
When you look into the forward markets in terms of where the market is trading oil and gas months from now.
Folks, there's a ton of news about the fourth stimulus payment that you're going to want to know in this video, so continue watching. So folks, here is the news that you have to know about the fourth stimulus payments because there's a ton of news to cover. As support is growing for more stimulus checks this year, economists have even confirmed that the vast majority of Americans should receive additional stimulus by the end of 2022. So while the crisis began early 2020, the aftermath is still hanging around with the inflation rates affecting so many Americans. The government actually started sending out payments up to $1,200 and followed by $600, and now we're needing $2,000 stimulus payments just for people to get by. And according to a recent survey, the government immediately following the second round of payments, Joe Biden came into office and launched the American Rescue Plan and provided $1,400 payments. So millions of people, lawmakers, and Congress continue to advocate for another round of relief. Because due to higher than average inflation rates this year, according to a survey, 62% of Americans are in favor of more stimulus in 2023. While the majority of the population is in favor of relief, 16% remain undecided and 22% are not in support of stimulus. Due to higher than average inflation rates, Americans have had to cut back their spending, and so many states took it upon themselves to provide this stimulus aid. As of now, 19 states have approved a bill to offer tax refunds to their residents before the end of 2021. So these payments range from $50 to $3,200 just for eligible people. And now, folks, many qualified Americans in the state of Alaska will receive a $3,200 direct payment. The Alaska legislature adopted a budget earlier this year. It includes $3,200 in payouts for qualified people by the end of the year. And according to the Alaska public media, the first round of these direct payments has actually begun to arrive in bank accounts this past fall, and paper checks are also continuing to be sent out. State officials have said that increased payments are necessary to do and deal with inflation, and rising energy prices and gas must be put down. Some states are obligated to disperse any excess funds, with residents instead reinvesting the money into the economy. So when it's too early to just determine whether states will have access to another stimulus package this year, many of the states are already doing their own thing. Employees in a school district in Maryland can expect extra cash because of the state and the city. Officials have said that around $1,000 is going out on December 16th to people who qualify for the stimulus, and Rhode Island is just sending a one-time payment of $250 per child. Households can receive a payment of up to 3 dependent children for a maximum of $750. And even the child tax rebate, everybody, began distribution in October. Taxpayers who file their state tax returns on extension by October 22 will receive the rebates in December of this year. And earlier this year, the Oregon legislature approved a one-time $600 stimulus check. Taxpayers got a lot of money this time, and so many people received the stimulus money that they need.
The Budget Office and the Joint Committee on Taxation released a report of the true cost of a permanent expansion. And it's pretty shocking for a number of reasons. First is the financial cost. By expanding the Obamacare premium tax credits and making them permanent, Democrats will add $248 billion to the federal deficit over the next decade. Mr. President, at my age and your age, we're not going to be the ones that have to pay that money back. But these young people sitting down here are going to have to pay the price for the profligate spending today. And all Americans will pay the price by adding fuel to the fire of inflation. For whatever reasons I really can't fathom, the federal debt and the national debt are of no concern to our Democratic colleagues. They simply don't seem to care. They act as though we're playing with monopoly money that we can print and borrow like there is no tomorrow, because none of this really matters. But we know that's not true. Every dollar we spend is paid for by taxpayers, and every ounce of debt we accrue will be carried and repaid by our children and our grandchildren. But none of this seems to matter to our friends across the aisle. They're still plowing ahead with this legislation, and unfortunately, the irresponsible spending.
Uncertainty.
The legal aid managing attorney says the economic impact payment system wasn't set up with low-income earners in mind.
It's almost as if it's just occurring to the Treasury and IRS as they go along, that not everybody fits the kind of cookie cutter tax filer with a bank account that they were thinking when they created this.
Local 12 spoke to more than a dozen low-income earners to see whether they have received their stimulus check and a bank account.
So here's the news. The lawmakers are taking huge action this week. Democrats and Republicans are discussing plans that would help cut poverty in half, and states have established new crisis relief programs aiming to provide relief to low income. This comes with extra stimulus cash and extra money in their bank. But now many of the crisis tax benefits from the past 2 years, like the expanded tax credit and temporary expansions to the child and dependent care credit and federal stimulus payments, all ended in 2021. A community refund will be a little bit smaller this year. And some Americans may find themselves owing taxes again. And according to Mark Stebner, a tax expert for Jackson Hewitt, next year a lot of things are put into place for 2021. In some part of 2020 will revert back to its pre-crisis years. It can lead to a refund shock, or even more importantly, balance due shock. In addition, some new regulations were put into place. Student loan forgiveness, for example, is exempt from federal taxation, and borrowers in some states owe taxes. One of the changes is that the standard deduction for 2022 is higher. It's typical for the standard deduction to increase a little each year, along with the rate of inflation, for your 2022 tax return. The standard deduction for single filers has been increased from $12,000 to just $12,950. That's up by $400, and it has bumped by $800 if you're filing married jointly. The standard deduction is what most taxpayers will simply have with a simple tax return in order to claim and reduce their taxable income. Income tax brackets are also higher in 2022. For 2022, income tax brackets were also raised to account for inflation. Your income bracket to how much tax you owe, based on your adjusted gross income, is the money you owe before taxes are taken out. And while the changes were slight, if you're at the bottom of a tax bracket, you may have bumped down to a lower rate for your returns. And while 2021 had a temporary expansion of the tax credit, including eligibility for more dependent credits and offering advance payments, it isn't the case for your 2022 taxes. The child tax credit has already dropped back to its pre-crisis amount, which is $2,000 per child, and now available to people 17 and under. The credit, which was fully refundable last year, is only refundable for a certain amount of people, meaning not everyone gets a stimulus payment this time around. Offering an important note that you can still claim the tax credit in 2022. It may help boost your refund and offset a tax bill. And while federal benefits have decreased, the states are offering child tax credit benefits this year next. The governor of Vermont has signed a tax cut package, and it will send $1,000 to every child 5 and under to Vermont households making $125,000 or less. And with federal stimulus money spending flooding into the states and boosting tax recipients, the Democrat-controlled legislature and Republican governor agreed on something that they're usually at odds over. It's cutting taxes. The House initially sought to spend nearly $50 million, almost entirely dedicated to the tax credit alone.